Diablo 3 Season 31 is here. Let's have a look at what the best S-tier build is for Crusaders. This is the Akkhans Condemn build. Starting off looking at the skills. First up, we're taking Judgement. Pass Judgement on all enemies within an area, immobilizing them in place for a short duration. Now, because of the Akkhans set that we're wearing, we are actually going to get all runes of this ability, being that Penitence, Heal for every enemy hit by our Judgement, Mass Verdict, all enemies are drawn towards the centre of the judged area, Deliberation, increasing the duration of the immobilize, Resolved, where damage dealt to judged enemies has an increased chance to do a critical hit, and Debilitate. Enemies in the judged area deal reduced damage to us. We then have Phalanx. Now, I know what you might be thinking. There's no Condemn actually on our skills. Don't worry, our Phalanx will actually activate Condemn when they are attacking enemies who are in our Judgement. That's because of the gear set we're wearing. So we're going to summon Phalanx, which are going to form a powerful wall before us. Steed Charge, mounting a celestial warhorse, allowing us to ride for enemies unhindered. Bind monsters near you with chains and drag them as you ride, dealing holy damage. Amazing. Iron Skin, a very simple defensive that is going to last even longer due to the steel skin rune we're using on it. Laws of Valor, basically giving you and your allies increasing the attack speed and also reducing the Wrath cost of skills for a short duration. Wrath is our main resource that you can see down here. Last is Akkhans Champion. Explode with the fury of your order, increasing your damage and Wrath regeneration. Gain additional armor while this is active, and the first time you take fatal damage, it's going to save you from that killing blow. Let's have a little look at the passive abilities, and then we'll go on to see how the gear synergizes with these skills. So for passives, we've got Heavenly Strength. You can wield a two-handed weapon in your main hand while bearing a shield in your offhand. Damage dealt is reduced, however, by 20%. The cooldown of Steed Charge is reduced by 25%, and Bombardment by 35%. Mainly here, we're going for the Steed Charge part of this. Damage dealt by Phalanx is increased by 20%. Of course, that is the skill we're using up here. Finery, gain 1.5% strength for every gem socketed into your gear. Woohoo for us, with all those gems. And then Long Arm of the Law. Watch out. Increasing the duration of the active effect of all laws by 5 seconds. And that is, of course, going to be for our Law of Valor, the one that's increasing our attack speed and also reducing the Wrath cost of all of our skills and abilities. Looking then, firstly, at the gear with the main set, the Akkhans set. The 2 set then has Judgement, has no cooldown and gains the effect of every rune. We've already spoken about that. That is our AoE Judgement, remember, that we're putting on the ground, sucking enemies in and doing lots of God knows what's with them, all the different runes. The 4 set then is where it gets more interesting. The attacks from our Phalanx avatars reduce the cooldown of Akkhans Champion. So basically the attacks from our Phalanx are actually going to reduce the cooldown on our big cooldown Akkhans Champion by 0.5 seconds, and also apply Condemn when attacking enemies that are affected by Judgement. So when they're attacking enemies who are affected by our Judgement, which remember has no cooldown and gets all runes, and we're putting it on the ground, basically when our Phalanx attack enemies in that area, we're actually going to get Condemn be activated, building up a massive explosion, unleashing it after 3 seconds, and that's what Condemn actually does. But we're not using it, our Phalanx are. Then the 6 set, while Akkhans Champion is active, again, that's that big cooldown here. While that is active, you're going to deal 1500% increased damage and take 50% less damage as well. Really, really amazing there then. One big thing we are going to want to get is reducing our cooldowns so that we can keep Akkhans Champion up as much as possible. Looking at the other pieces, on the helm, the War Helm of Cassar is a really good one, reducing the cooldown and increasing the damage of Phalanx by 60%. On the wrists, we've got the Strong Arm Bracers. Enemies hit by knockbacks suffer 30% increased damage for 6 seconds. And then going on to the weapons, we've got Flail of the Charge, adding another 2 set here from Norvald's Fervour, increasing the duration of Steel Charge by 2 seconds. That is our speed ability. We're dragging them all along with Holy Chains. And killing an enemy reduces the cooldown of Steed Charge by 1 second. Gain 200% increased damage when using the charge and for 5 seconds after it ends. That, of course, is going in with the shield as well on that set. We are going to be using the Ring of Royal Grandeur here, so that we only need 2 pieces of the set, not 3. Of course, the same on Akkhans, we only need 5 pieces, not 6, to get the 6 set bonus. That's what the Ring of Royal Grandeur does. On the other ring, we've got the Convection of Elements. As you can see, giving 200% increased damage to a certain element every 4 seconds. Holy is one of these elements. Every time we get Holy, obviously we're doing 200% more damage of all our Holy damage. And lastly, the 2 last pieces are going to be Captain Crimson's, which is, again, we only need 2, not 3 pieces because of the ring. And we're going to get on the 2 set, regenerate a load of life, get massive cooldown of all skills reduced by 20%, reducing all resource costs by 20% as well. The free set then, damage dealt is increased by a percentage of your cooldown reduction, further increasing our reliance on cooldown reduction there, and damage taken is reduced by a percentage of your cost reduction. Now, remember we've got finery, increasing our strength for every gem socketed, so we can just put loads of gems in here. I've put resistance in specifically for a bit more survivability because we don't have a ton of it in this build. You can add strength if you feel like you don't need the survivability. It's entirely up to you. And of course, always putting an emerald into the weapon for increased crit hit damage. Looking at what we've put in Kanai's cube then, which remember this season, you don't have to have one armor, one weapon and one jewelry slot. You can mix and match. That is what this season is in season 31. We've got Fear des Wrath on the first slot. Condemn has no cooldown and its damage is increased by 800%, but instead costs 40 Wrath. Of course, the damage increase that will go through to our phalanx when they're using Condemn. We've got the Blade of Prophecy. Condemned enemies also trigger Condemn's explosion, and the damage of Condemn again is increased by 800%. And lastly, the Unrelenting Phalanx. Phalanx now casts twice, therefore getting more Condemns out, therefore doing more damage, and it all synergizes nicely together. Going on to what we're going to be gearing up our follower for, I like to take the Enchantress. Putting the Temporal Pulse on the first one, slowing enemies and doing some arcane damage. Prophetic Harmony, reducing your skill's cooldown by 5% based on the Enchantress's intelligence. Therefore, in every gem slot available, it is really important that you try and get intelligence gems and the highest ones possible into the Enchantress. Lastly, well not lastly, actually there's two more. Powered Shield, reducing damage taken, and slowing melee attackers for 3 seconds for you and the Enchantress based again on her intelligence, making that intelligence gems really important. And Focus Mind, a 40-yard aura that increases attack speed for you and the Enchantress by 3% based again on her intelligence. We do want to get intelligence as much as we can on the gear, as well as the gems, of course. Things that are really important with the gear you can put on her. Thunder Fury, bouncing around lightning damage up to 5 enemies and slowing them. The Oculus Ring, this makes a little gold circle on the floor. If you stand in it, you will do more damage. Nemesis Bracers emanates on here, you can see in brackets. That means it's actually going to affect the Enchantress and you. Shrines will spawn an enemy champion. Therefore, killing them in greater rifts and rifts is going to spawn more orbs and you can farm rifts more quickly. Flavour of Time, again, emanates on there. Pylon effects lasting twice as long. We've got the homing pads on the shoulders so that when you're trying to cast your town portal, you aren't interrupted by any damage from enemies, and you're going to reduce your damage taken, especially on hardcore. When trying to get back to town really quickly in difficult circumstances, this is fantastic. And lastly, another important one is the Gloves of Worship, where shrine effects last for 10 minutes. Oh, and one more thing is the Smoking Formidable, which basically means your follower cannot die. If you can get this, it's great, because if your follower does die, it will respawn, don't worry, if you're not aware. However, these abilities will not be usable when they are dead or resuscitating, you know, kind of out of the battlefield, shall we say. I did forget when going through the gear to go through the legendary gems. Oops, shoot me, why don't you? Let's have a look at these now. Enforcer, increasing the damage of your pets and your pets taking less damage. TLDR, this affects your phalanxes. Fantastic on that one. We've got Bane of the Stricken, where each attack you do against an enemy increases their damage taken, and we're going to gain 25% increased damage against bosses and Rift Guardians. This is just a really straightforward gem that works on a lot of builds. And then lastly, we've got the Bane of the Trapped, increasing damage against enemies under the effects of controlling pairing effects. And we do also gain an aura that is going to movement impair them as well on that one. Looking at the Paragon point priority, of course, you will max these out, but that's fine. First of all, then we're going to be looking at putting it into movement speed. Then it's going to be strength, because we don't really need the maximum wrath at all. So as much as you can put into strength, if you feel like you need more survivability, put some into vitality, otherwise into strength, and vice versa. Offensive skills on Paragon points, we're going to go for cooldown reduction, trying to keep up and remember the Akkhans champion as much as possible. Then it's going to be critical hit damage, and then chance, and then attack speed. On defense, it's going to be resist all, then it's going to be armor, then it's going to be life, and then life regen. And lastly, on utility points, we're going to put actually on pickup radius, resource cost reduction, life per hit, and then area damage. For the stat priorities, it's actually quite interesting and may not be what you might initially think. First up, cooldown reduction, get as much as this as possible. After that, we can go for elemental and holy damage, crit chance and crit damage. Now, you may be thinking where Condemn is doing big AoE explosions that you actually want area damage. It doesn't proc because it's coming off the phalanxes and not you, area damage on your gear does not impact it. That is why on the Paragon points, we weren't taking it to start with. We're taking it as the least priority, and why we don't want it on our gear. That's a big misconception that you could fall prey to on this build, and I want to make sure, obviously, you don't do that. So you can ignore area damage. Apart from these top 4/5 stat prios, really just going for defensives after this mainly. But again, I want to reiterate, cooldown reduction is king here. So how is it actually all going to come together, and how are we going to play it? Well, we can, of course, be using our judgement. We can be using our phalanxes on cooldown, making sure that wherever they're attacking it is within the judgement area. We can also use our laws of valor on cooldown as well for increased attack speed, etc. for you and your allies if you're playing in a group. Again, Akkhans Champion, just use it on cooldown, and remember, as much cooldown reduction as possible for this one. And then Steed Charge is pretty much going to be your mobility skill, but do also use it even if you don't need to move, because of the buffs we're getting off it on our weapon set of Nerva's Fervor. Apart from that, you've just got your Iron Skin cooldown for damage reduction when you need it. The actual gameplay of it is pretty brain dead, to be honest. You know, you're just using your judgments, your phalanxes, and your pets are doing really most of the damage for you. But needless to say, it is a really fun build. If you did enjoy this, please let me know in the comments below. This is a new channel. I haven't been doing Diablo, well, this is my second day doing Diablo actually, so I really haven't been doing it very long. I am going to be doing more Diablo guides, Diablo 3, Diablo Immortal, Diablo 4, maybe even Diablo 2. I'd even do Diablo 1 if you wanted. I've still got the CD in my cupboard from a billion years ago. I've always been a really big Diablo fan. I actually have a main World of Warcraft channel, but Diablo and other Blizzard games is something I really, really enjoy, and I wanted to do guides for these as well, making it really digestible and accessible, especially for maybe new players. So do let me know your thoughts. Please do subscribe. It really helps the channel, especially when we're this small and looking to obviously grow. You can also join my Discord if you want any extra help or want a group to play with. I'm always happy to play with other people. I love Diablo so much. And you can also join my Patreon if you'd like to get some more behind the scenes things on upcoming projects and things like that. Or if you just like to support the channel. You can also click here, and there is a playlist, of course, for all the current Diablo 3 S-tier builds. And I may even do some other builds if you guys want them as well. Again, if you do want to see a build, just comment down below, and I'm happy to make it for you guys.